Okay, this is a big subject, and I do have a real life wife, not a waifu, wife. But being a fan of anime for so long, I understand the concept of waifu, and it's these authors, all authors will tell you it's all about the characters, right? You have to make characters that people can emotionally connect to, and manga and other authors, creators throughout the world have become very good at this. It's creating, those characters that people can relate to, that they feel emotions for, whether, if it's a bad guy, you want to hate them. If it's a good girl, they want you to, love them. And then they create like these emotionally impacted moments, right? So the big climax to the fight scene, or something terrible happens, or the drama. So it's no surprise that people fall in love with in this case anime characters, right? This is not a new phenomenon. Look at the legend of Galatea and Pygmalion. Now I'm going to read from Wikipedia here, so please forgive me, but I'm using Ovid's Metamorphoses as kind of that is the most common basis for the legend. So Galatea translates as she who is milk white. That makes sense for a woman that was created from a statue. Anyway, so according to Ovid, when Pygmalion saw the Propytides, and I probably pronounced that wrong, of Cyprus, practicing prostitution, he began detesting the faults beyond measure which nature has given to women. He determined to remain celibate and to occupy himself with sculpting. He made a sculpture of a woman that he found so perfect, he fell in love with it. Pygmalion kisses and fondles the sculpture, brings it various gifts, and creates a sumptuous bed for it. Now, does this remind you of a body pillow by any stretch? Or let me rephrase that. Let me put that another way. Has stone been replaced by silicone? Because in case you didn't know it, there's various dolls and toys out there. So anyway, in time, Aphrodite's festival day came, and Pygmalion made offerings at the altar of Aphrodite. There, too afraid to admit his desire, he quietly wished for a bride who'd be the living likeness of my ivory girl. When he returned home, he kissed his ivory statue and found that its lips felt warm. He kissed it again and found that the ivory had lost its hardness. Aphrodite had granted Pygmalion's wish. Pygmalion married the ivory sculpture, which changed to a woman under Aphrodite's blessing, and in Ovid's narrative, they had a daughter, Paphos, for whom the city is named, and in other versions they also had a son. What's interesting to me here is that normally when the gods visit men in such stories, or people, let's say, it does not end well. It could have been the case that perhaps women were associated with Aphrodite's temple and decided to go into business on their own, and this is a precautionary tale, right? So I'm not, like I said, I'm not a scholar of the classic literature, but usually there's some degree of caution in these stories. But it was just like, this is a really old story, right? Like, this is, I think, a couple thousand years old, somewhere around there. But man, how much it relates to today. And then there's always the involuntary celibate, or the what's called the incel. And a lot of times, a lot of these people have different anxiety issues and whatnot, right? So it is hard to relate in these relationships. And I'm going to ramble here, but I mean, think about it. This is probably the first generation that will have more virtual relationships than real relationships. Maybe it's the second generation, I'm not sure. But you think about how many people see faces on screens, right? And whether they're real or fictional. Yes, a lot of times it's hard to even differentiate if you look at like VTubers who are both, right? It's a real person with a fictional avatar. we're withdrawing into a virtual world as you're watching this on the screen, obviously. But yeah, so it's not, to me, it's not surprising that the waifu relationship, where a person not only forms that emotional attachment to a fictional character, which was designed to do. I mean, they know darn well what they're doing, right? It's like we created this character to have that kind of emotional impact, and a lot of times it succeeds, right? But you've got like this pandemic of loneliness, and people will take it to, the point where I'm not only going to fall for this character, I'm going to fall for this character exclusively. Now, to be fair, there are those polygamous waifu people who believe in multi-relationships, and I don't think they're waifus mind, but they're also monogamous waifu people, and they make that sort of admiration exclusive, but it spills over into the real life in that the fictional character maintains that exclusivity to the point of real life relationships. And again, I'm not here to pass judgment or anything. I know each case is different, but the thing is too, I mean, except for like the 1 in a million, everybody realizes that they're fictional characters, right? They know the nature of the relationship. So I'm not here to say people are deluded or anything like that, but it's just, here's the other crazy thing, is that we're not that far away from basically making androids out of these waifu. Like, if you look at adaptive AI right now and machine learning and how you could set it up with a waifu personality, right? It's like, which character do you like? Let's take, I don't know, Belle Dandy, for instance, right? All those traits, all those, how Belle Dandy reacts. That's easy enough to put into an adaptive AI, machine learning. So what would Belle Dandy do, right? Pretty simple. The robotics technology is getting there. It's not perfect, but there's already companies that make these, relationship companion androids. And like I said, it's the stone has become silicone. It amazes me that basically the legend of Pygmalion, and who later became Galatea, because I don't think the statues had a name way back when, but that whole myth, how it's sort of so relative as well, because if you look at, so many people are disgusted in online dating and da-da-da-da-da, and they're, they want their ideal mate. And that's what Galatea is. She's an ideal, right? But she was never meant to come to life, and yet in the myth she did. And what's weird is that there was no divine punishment for it. Just some other factoids too, like if you look, of course, Pygmalion, George Bernard Shaw play with Eliza Doolittle and Henry Higgins, which most people know as My Fair Lady these days. What you might not have realized, that same myth in Wonder Woman. Queen Hippolyte basically forms Diana, the baby Diana, out of clay and imbues her with the breath of life. It's basically a retelling of the Galatea myth. Pinocchio, same deal. Now, this is a case where there were repercussions, because it interests me, because you've got the lonely olden man Geppetto, the puppet maker, who's, dedicated himself to his craft. He makes puppets. Basically, he's a sculptor, right? So he wishes for a son, a real life. He wishes Pinocchio could be a real life boy. The blue fairy grants his wish. So it's basically like a retelling of the Galatea myth, right? To that point. But the thing is, it's based on a little more reality, because it doesn't go completely well for Geppetto in that Pinocchio gets into all sorts of mischief, and he's very naive, as you would expect from a wooden puppet that became a real-life boy. And yeah, like I said, big topic, but interesting to look at this. So just some thoughts. I love the comments. I love the sharing, and I got a lot of smart people out there. I'm not a full-time YouTuber. Like Saitama, I'm a YouTuber for fun. My real life occupies a lot of my time, mainly with work, but family life and whatnot. So this is just for fun. So sorry I can't always dive in as deep as I want to, but I try to do what I can and get some ideas out there just for people to expand on them. I don't have all the answers, but I'm hoping people still enjoy the thoughts. Anyways, talk to everybody next week. Bye-bye.